Hi there, my name is Ryan Anderson. This is a informal summary of some bits and pieces that I've been meaning to pull together. The broad theme is architecting embodied cognition, and it's an informal summary of some ideas around synthetic identity, empathetic systems, character cartridges, and sense-making systems with emotional intelligence. Um, what we'll do is we'll sort of break up the presentation here into three broad groups. The first one is around the human assistive applications for these kinds of ideas, autism, treatment of dementia, Alzheimer's, PTSD, or a companion for an aging relative. The second group will be around the applications for business and executives, so business intelligence, increasing situational awareness for executives, helping with data discovery for leadership, and then a conversation around executive decision support, so ways to reduce risk and by presenting dissenting views. And then thirdly, we'll dive into some new media, a topic around animating the animations, introducing a concept called character cartridges, and media multipliers, and then a thought experiment called the leg test. These are the asset locations, so I'll add to this and put them in the comments area. So this is a really informal summary. I've had a lot of these bits and pieces laying around. These are all publicly referenceable, publicly locatable ideas from blogs, from various GitHub repos and whatnot. And I've been meaning for some time to sort of pull it all together, largely to get my own sort of thoughts together. So thinking of this as sort of tugging on the threads and weaving a few of them together to sort of resynthesize them and recompose them. The first section will be uh, touching on these broad concepts of design patterns, these meta use cases, these buckets of use cases. There's been a few examples where we've done this, and we'll look at the distillate of this just briefly. Uh, and then we'll launch into sort of the blue section here. And the blue section, if you recall, is the human assistive piece. The green is the business executive, and the orange is the new media. So the blue will touch on topics of cognitive companion, have a quick look at the GitHub repo, talk about the autism patterns and proofs of concepts, and the human assistive around eldercare, dementia, and Alzheimer. This is not comprehensive by any means, mainly just a locator to sort of put some pins in the map on some of these concepts and some of these assets. The next group will be focusing on the executive and the leadership, the business intelligence piece, the decision support piece, and pointing to some blogs and some ideas around dissenting views and risk reduction, and using AI as a critical counterparty. And then last section is the new media section, concept of character cartridges, animating the animation, so to speak. Lastly, section 11, touching on the technology ingredients, and then just a summary of. So informal, jumping around a little bit, and largely to try to weave some of these concepts together and locate them and organize them. So let's start with design patterns. There's three design patterns on the right-hand side of the screen. The top right-hand corner are meta use cases or buckets of use cases around the broad application of AI, largely in this case looking through the lens of Watson, IBM Watson technologies, but not only. For example, some use cases around segmentation and personalization, another one around cracking the carbon of unstructured data to pull signal out of it, so to speak. The second section on the right-hand side is double-clicking on the augmented and virtual reality types of solutions. And this is where you start to see some of these patterns emerging. Decision support, cognitive extenders, cognitive wingman applied for people with autism or other folks that might need a little bit extra help, Alzheimer's, eldercare. Expertise projection is another one of these. And then bottom right is another application looking more through the concept of edge computing and the ability to deploy compute and compute technology to the edge and really where the action is happening. So this might be your Echo device. This might be a little virtual or non-virtual companion riding on a shoulder in augmented reality glasses, a voice in the ear, or maybe your car, for example. So these three groups of design patterns, uh, there are blogs on each one of them. There are decks on each one of them. And the Distill it really can map to these human assistive, the business executive, and the new media. So there are these three assets, these separate presentations of design patterns, these meta use cases that are available to sort of dig into a little bit more. So for the practical application of embodied cognition, let's talk about and dig into the human assistive use cases: autism, aging in companions, dementia and Alzheimer's, PTSD in education. These are where sense-making systems that can hold a degree of synthetic identity can present themselves as authentic counterparties, but also have the ability to be sense-making systems to understand what the other human or humans in the area are up to or doing. So, if you've got an automated system that is living with your aging grandparent, if grandmother is really not herself from day to day, the same things that might uh, cause a grandchild to walk out of a visit with grandmother and say, well, grandmother's not really herself today. These same kinds of signals can be extracted and located using AI. So that's one mini use case there. Autism is a good use case, and one that I believe is more immediately applicable for AI to help, is using AI, using technology as a social signal booster for folks that need a little bit of extra help, folks that are on the spectrum. So this is the cognitive companion concept. We see Jarvis if you're Iron Man, or Kit if you're Knight Rider, or Her if you've seen the movie. The broad theme here is as a cognitive wingman or a cognitive companion. And let's hop here for a second. There's a blog posting here on Dream to Learn, which is where some of my blogs are living. And you can see here there are blogs on the Autism Sidekick. My friend Jake Madden did a great video on this one that was a submission for a Unity contest. Actually, two of them here through AR. So we scroll down a little bit further. We can see there's a couple of other postings that are down here that are applicable to folks with autism. And I'll pull those up a little bit later. You can see in here on my YouTube channel. Find the little bear here. Here we are. Here's Thomas the empathetic robot. So this is a set of eyeglasses that are listening to the conversation and determining the tone of the counterparty and the tone of the conversation, and projecting the colors into the field of view. This was a fun one, done with Tone Analyzer. And in this case, extracting from the tone of voice and taking the dominant signal or the dominant tone and sending it to a device, in this case using Twilio and an SMS to send to a manager or a parent or a guardian to pick up on the tone of the conversation. So again, just some high-level examples there. I'll unpack that a little bit more, but broadly speaking, the design pattern and the use case is around creating a cognitive companion, a cognitive wingman, or a wingman or a companion that is AI, that is a counterparty to be in the ear, to be a support to someone that might need a little bit extra help. So an aging relative that's starting to forget things. It could be anybody else that needs a little bit extra help navigating the world or navigating society and social cues. GitHub repos. Let's go have a look at those. So my repos are pretty messily organized, but you can see in here there's a group here around character cartridges and embodied identity, which we'll dig into a little bit more later. But there's some summaries around the character cartridges, which we'll touch on. And in terms of basic scripts, these ones are written in the R programming language. In this case, these use the Watson APIs, and some of these APIs are good for extracting transcripts from speech to text. Others are good for extracting tone or other elements of the conversation from the transcripts that are in there. You can see the empathetic robot is here. We've got some natural language understanding, some NL classifiers. There's also a bucket of NL classifier training data in another repository here. So lots of little getting started scripts here using the R programming language and digging in. There's the Watson augmented reality glasses that we saw using tone. What else we got here? got a Harry Potter sorting hat if you're interested in building your own sorting hat. I won't go through all of these, but there's a bit of a dog's breakfast here, but lots of little code bits to play with if you are interested in getting started with some of these. All right, so let's go back to the deck. Those are the GitHub repos. I'll post that. So around autism and folks on the spectrum, here's some of the prototypes. You saw that one. Top right corner, there's a nicer version of Rainbow Octopus. I'll put in the notes using the Unity and the Watson software development kit for Unity. Bottom right hand corner is a little teddy bear that's wearing the glasses as a emotionally responsive animal. My friend Jake Madden has done a couple of really neat projects here. Autism Sidekick. It's a video worth watching with various vignettes that he's put in there. And then he also did a hack on a Magic Leap headset. And so Jake and I have been talking a little bit about the different modes that you can have around here. The first one is the Wingman Sidekick that provides social signal boosting, behavioral nudges, and companion support to really help folks navigate the world a little bit better. And the second one could be really a post-event analysis for caregivers, for therapists, for parents to flag and surface everyday reviews. So if there was in a day there was 4 or 5 impactful moments, you could, if you were filming them or recording them, you could sort of surface those out and tease those out and help the folks better understand what's going on and improve for the future. So the broad feeling here is, my opinion is that the technology ingredients exist today to put all this together, to provide social signal boosters, to create these companions. Probably won't be great out of the gates, but to do a good job of creating authentic counterparties or AI-powered synthetic identities to be these counterparties for folks that are needing a little bit of help navigating the world. On the broader theme of human assistive, we think of the elderly, folks with dementia, folks with Alzheimer. Top right corner there is Hasbro's Joy for All. That's a companion pet. Bottom right corner is a Harvard Business Review article that talked a little bit about matching in call centers, understanding the type of human party. In this case, it was dialing into a call center and matching the human agent to them. That pattern should apply to automated and AI-powered mechanisms as well, to really understand the human that you're dealing with, to tune the AI, to tune the synthetic identity, to really empathize and understand the person that they're living with. On the left-hand side, there's some work that we did on analyzing call center transcripts, and from moment to moment, or 5-second window to 5-second window, understanding the speech and the state of the counterparty and the emotional state of the counterparty, and reacting and adjusting accordingly. So that was a really high level on some of the human assistive stuff. The links will be at the bottom of the YouTube video. Let's talk a little bit about business and executive, focusing on the situational awareness for business intelligence and data discovery, being able to verbally interrogate your data, for example. And then this other topic of executive decision support and the power of dissenting views and managing risk. So for executive decision support, there's a very eye-charty looking analysis over there around avatars and the building blocks for these decision support. The one on the left was done for a set of blog articles called the Davos Dashboard. Let me see if I can dig them up here. There we are, Decision Support Framework for 2050. So there's an article that goes into that a little bit more. And then I think there's another one down here in a LinkedIn article, which I didn't post here, but I'll make sure that I get the link up. That's called the Davos Dashboard. And the other piece back here, oh yes, De Bono's 6 Thinking Hats. Edward De Bono wrote a book called 6 Thinking Hats, and it speaks to the power of diverse points of view in conversations and in projects. And whether you view it as a devil's advocate or a black hat, having someone in the room that challenges constructively these ideas about being cautious or careful, or reflecting on assumptions, is actually a powerful and risk mitigating presence to have in the room. Which brings us to the power of dissenting views. On the left-hand side, some really good articles that were authored largely, or at least from the materials that I was looking at, kicking off with the Bay of Pigs fiasco during the John F. Kennedy administration, uh, and analysis by those parties that led them to understand that groupthink and having everyone think and everyone be a yes man in the room was not the best way to make the best sorts of decisions. And you see with later administrations, uh, post-Vietnam analysis, with the creation of this dissent channel by Dean Rusk and the government, by creating channels and mechanisms by which organizations can voice dissenting views, partly to channel them and manage risk of spillage, but also to bring to the attention strong and coherent counterpoints or points of view. The Obama administration was a large proponent of having vigorous debate within the room to create the most robust arguments and decisions in there. On the right-hand side, there's an IBM debater, project debater. It's worth a look. It's quite a marvelous composition of technologies in terms of having an automated agent have a very coherent counterpoint and presenting counterpoints to humans during a real debate, and a good video worth watching. So yeah, that's the broad theme of Dissenting Views. There's a whole bunch more in there, but it's a really interesting topic space, and one I think that can present a lot of value as you go and think about cases where there are leaders, executives, leaders of nations that are making large, impactful decisions, sometimes relying on data, sometimes relying on models. To be able to have a counterparty in the room, even a synthetic or an artificial one, that can at least raise a hand and start opening up a conversation that might lead some other humans to at least give them an opening to sort of push back a little bit. This could be a board level or an executive level or whatnot. Lastly, on new media, animating the animations in the lake test. So in animating the animations, we think of use cases where Marvel Comic Universe or another DC Comics or any other sort of cartoon or character from the various media empires. Think about the power if we could actually animate those animations. If you could have your own version of Jarvis, if you could have your own version of Green Lantern or Kit or whatever, whispering in your ears, and really to be your companion, one that would know you and you would know it, and you'd have a high degree of authenticity between it and you. You'd start to develop a history and a rapport with it. I think there's real power in being able to animate the animations to create a new level of experience and interaction with these characters that have been wonderfully created. So there's some various topics that are within here. Let's jump in back to some of these ones here. So the conversation starters in emerging tech and new media goes into this a little bit. And there's a couple of other videos as well, including some of these avatars here, where we've gone into Unity and created a volumetric representation of the emotional state of the various. So look at that. So right now I'm talking to this avatar, and it's responding depending on what I say to it. In this case, I'm saying pretty nice things to it. Again, in a very rudimentary example, but the beginnings, the foundations. Character cartridges here. I'll speak to this a little bit more, but this is where it's located in the blogs. All right, let's jump back. So yeah, character cartridges. The concept here is imagining that you could take identity, synthetic identity, into an otherwise blank or neutral character. It could be in virtual reality or an augmented reality, or the voice in your ear, and basically be able to sort of pull a cartridge out and plug a new cartridge in and have this degree of identity. This is one of the design patterns here. And the example we give is imagine you have 3 character cartridges. One is a Tony Stark, Elon Musk hybrid, right? Another one might be an Oprah Winfrey, a J.K. Rowling blend, and the third one might be a fairly analytical Jarvis Kit identity. And ask yourself, how would you start to architect this? What character traits or affinities or areas of interest does the red cartridge have versus the pink cartridge versus the brown cartridge? How would you architect that? How would you build? How would you train it to evolve and be authentic and realistic over time? And that's where the character cartridges blogs come in, is to start to build a foundation, to start to build that. Some prototypes here. So here's our 3 avatars. And the thought experiment, or the example that we imagine here, is imagine you are in a green field, and the green field has a brook running through it. we'll call it Data Brook. And you walk up to Data Brook and you see these three avatars standing and looking into the Data Brook, and they're watching barges of data float by. Sometimes it's tweets, sometimes it's clips from YouTube or television, any other artifacts that are sort of floating by, and observable unstructured data to solicit a response, an emotional response out of each one of these. They don't speak, they just watch. They are the observers, and you are the observer observing the observers. So you go up and you flip up the backs of their heads and you watch their reactions. You watch how their emotional state changes, how their level of interest or arousal changes based on what's floating by in each one of the barges. The Elon Musk, Tony Stark barge, or his character is watching a barge float by, and there's an article on the Chinese landing a lander on the moon. Well, space travel is clearly an area of interest for some of these avatars, perhaps more than others. There'd be a high degree of arousal and interest from Tony Stark and Elon Musk, and probably a great deal of joy of a country being able to land something on the moon. Similarly, Oprah and JK into books. Oprah's got her book list. JK is an author. When information around the Booker Prize or book prizes comes by, the degree of arousal or interest in that topic would go in, and depending on sort of the interpretation of the state, it may be, a high degree of intensity of positive or negative emotions around that. And then similarly with Jarvis and Kit, you may have an automated system who is charged with the protection and risk mitigation, behaving in certain ways, recommending in certain ways, or having degrees of anxiety in certain ways. And again, in these three cases, you're just creating a very basic um, um, degree of awareness. They're not speaking, they're not even reacting. You are just creating a test bed for you to observe the reaction of these avatars as you run these simulations tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of times in these scenarios. So these are the character cartridges, and here's the basic sort of concept of it. Um, so we've got our basic foundation personality, our archetypes or attributes, which we talk about in another blog in this case. Then you've got sort of your first level of context, um, your, your, your norms and your social relations. The degree of arousal in a topic space is relevant here. And again, SpaceX launched a mission to deploy this into Earth orbits. So a high degree of interest in the green data river that's floating by, data brook that's going by. And the time slicer, item 6, is extracting signal for 7, and there's an interpreter in item 8, which is going to change the emotional state and a degree of memory on here. And this ultimately ends up as a programmable test bed for each of these different characters or character cartridges that we have. So that's that, and there's a blog on that as well. This brings us to sort of the lake test. This is a thought experiment that imagines we're 5 years, 10 years down the line, and we're able to sort of create these synthetic identities, these empathetic systems that are ours, that are sort of our pals. And the lake test is just simply this: if somebody comes into your house and grabs your Amazon Echo and throws it into a lake, and you see it sink, you would be sad that you'd have to buy another one, but you wouldn't probably feel a sense of loss. There's no history, there's no companionship, there's no sense of loss. If somebody came into your house and did that to your cat, you'd feel very angry because you love your cat. I love my cat, and you'd feel a sense of loss that you've lost your pal. And the question is for the lake test is, can you develop a synthetic identity, a counterparty, an avatar, a cognitive wingman, whatever you want to call it, that you have a degree of love or connection with or history with, that you would feel more like the loss of your cat than you would like the loss of your Echo device. And so that's basically the lake test: is when somebody goes and throws your avatar into the lake and it sinks and it hasn't been backed up in the cloud, do you feel that degree of emotion or near that degree of emotion as you would for your cat? So there's some technology and ingredients and software development kits and APIs and patterns. There'll be links to a lot of those. There's some pretty good stuff out there if you want to get started and thinking about it. Methods to sort of organize and understand emotions at any one moment in time. There's also some interesting theories around archetypes, Jungian archetypes and classifications and clustering of personalities and identity. Some really interesting work, especially coming out of New Zealand, about very realistic artificial visuals. Soul Machines and FaceMe are a couple of great companies. Top right corner there, that's Simon from the International Space Station. And then some really good open source materials like bottom middle there that are good at sort of picking up and mapping facial expressions if you're looking through the camera. And then structures around empathetic intelligence, about values and needs and roles, etc. There's a great little getting started platform called Rainbow Octopus, developed by some of the Hersley folks, IBM Hersley Emerging Technology Group, integrating the IBM Watson Software Development Kit with the Unity platform to sort of get started and have your PAL, your Rainbow Octopus, sort of roll along there. And there's some animations that are visible and the code's available. We talked about the leg test, and then yeah, here's some of the asset locations. A lot of my stuff's in the blogs. There's some GitHub repos. There's some YouTube videos here. Let me jump over here again. Uh, Here's the YouTube channel on AR, VR, and XR. There's a cognitive companion down here called Mackenzie, and Mackenzie is so Mackenzie's listening here, and you're able. The fun thing about this example here is being able to switch modes, command into diagnostic mode, manually command the recalibration of voice intonation, turning up or down humor levels, for example, or switching in and having dominant NL classifiers and natural language understanding. So um, I'll leave that there. So I think that's basically it. So again, this is a bit of a messy um, compilation, but some threads that hopefully you find interesting to tug on. And certainly for me, it's been helpful to sort of pull them all together and synthesize them and get them all in one spot. So thanks for watching. And as I said, some of the links will get posted down in the comment section. Thanks very much.